The Insider by Christopher Evans. This is the same guy that wrote Aztec Century and Mortal Remains, the latter of which I have read. But I think this is his second book. It's pretty slender. This is in pretty nice condition. This was published in 1981. Yeah, so it's his second novel. His first novel, Capella's Golden Eyes, was only published in paperback. This is his second, The Insider, and that's in the Faber. And very nice it is too. And we've got a few Christopher Priests. And the first of which I'm really delighted to have is The Glamour, which is from 1982, early 80s, I think. And this is in, I would say, very good condition, maybe approaching fine. And it is from 1984, one of his better known books, I think. Quite an austere kind of, I think it's Jonathan Cape. Yeah, Jonathan Cape cover. Doesn't give much away in terms of the content of the book. I quite like it. I think it's quite smart. And then another Christopher Priest. I've been on a little fishing expedition for Christopher Priest books. This one is the Dream Archipelago, which is a collection of short stories or novellas. Looks like 6 longish short stories or novellas, or a combination thereof. I'm not entirely sure. But it's in perfect condition. It's in Earthlight. And this was compiled. The stories were written and published separately over various years between 1978 and 1999. And this collection is from 1999. And it is in pristine condition. Fantastic. Wasn't hugely expensive. It cost me £10 or £12 maybe, including postage. And then a more recent one. It's not that recent. It's from the early 2000s. The Separation, which is a sort of which features twins. It's a recurring theme that Christopher Priest revisits from time to time. The Prestige being the most famous example of that. And this is it's in the Golanx. It is from 2002, so just over 20 years ago. I would like to get a full set of Christopher Priest, but I think the earlier ones are now tricky to get hold of for sensible money, or at all, in fact. We shall see. Good things come to those who wait. And this is the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. It's actually a book club edition, edited by Ben Bova. The first Science Fiction Hall of Fame collection, or anthology rather, was short stories edited by Robert Silverberg, if I remember rightly. And there is, and then the second volume is in 2 parts. This is part 1, and that is of novellas and novelettes. So this has the greatest science fiction novellas of all time, according to the Science Fiction Writers of America, and then compiled by Ben Bova, as I said. And apparently there were 76 recommended stories by the Science Fiction Writers of America, and that was reduced to 24, of which reached the highest number of votes. And then a few of those weren't available for this collection. So there were still 20 stories, averaging 20,000 words each, so decent length. And then, so in here's an introduction by Ben Bova. There's a novella by Paul Anderson, something by John W. Campbell, something by Lester Del Rey, Robert Heinlein, C.M. Kornbluth, Kuttner and Moore, Eric Frank Russell, Cordwainer Smith, Theodore Sturgeon, Jack Williamson. So that's a pretty good collection of people. And I had a little diversion because they were in the Oxfam bookshop that I was visiting looking for science fiction, and I decided to buy them. I went through a phase some years back of collecting John le Carre hardbacks, and I've done pretty well. I've got nearly all of them except the first few, which are really hard to come by. And A Small Town in Germany is one that I didn't have. It's a little bit kind of bumped at the top of the dust jacket, but not too bad. And I think it's his 5th book. So The Spy Who Came In From the Cold is the 3rd, and this is the 5th after The Looking Glass War. And this dates back to 1968. So not science fiction. This will go on my downstairs shelves to go with the rest of the le Carres. And then while we're on the subject of non-science fiction books, I was very pleased to find in the mid-80s, early 90s, I went through a real Tom Clancy thriller stage. I don't like his later ones particularly, but the earlier ones I really enjoyed, the kind of height of the Cold War stuff. So The Hunt for Red October was his first book, and this is a UK first edition, second impression. So it's not first, but a first edition, second impression. So it is identical to the first edition. It's just another print run. And it's got the kind of Tron-style nuclear submarine on the front. I haven't read this for a long time, but I really enjoyed the book, and I've read it a few times, and I quite enjoyed the movie as well, actually. It's military science fiction. It's not military science fiction, it's military fiction. It's a military thriller, as the name suggests, or as the picture suggests, submarine tale. Very, very good. So that can go down on my downstairs shelves as well. Got book 1 of the World War saga by Howard Turtledove, this is In the Balance. I picked up books 2 and 4 in a charity shop when I was on a weekend away a few months back in hardback. And so I've been sort of half looking out for books 1 and 3 to complete the first set of 4. There are about 10 in this series in total, but the original series was just 4. They might well be rubbish, I don't know, but I was intrigued by the prospect of World War II aircraft and alien dinosaurs with blasters. Sounds like fun. So this is book 1. I'm still missing book 3, so I have to get that at some point, but I could at least start it at some point, in that I have books 1 and 2. That would keep me going for a while. Last weekend, which would have been the weekend of the 5th, 6th of July, that weekend, I met in London Bruce, who's a viewer of this channel amongst others. He was in town briefly, and we did a lightning bookshop sweep of central London, just going to a few secondhand bookshops of my acquaintance, and we both came away with a few books. He several, and me 2. And what I picked up were Neverness by David Zindel, and I don't know anything about this book other than what I found out when I did I think it was the 1990 space opera video from a few months back earlier this year. I don't know, strictly speaking, if it's even really space opera, but we went in that video. There wasn't a lot of space opera going on in the 90s, and it sounds intriguing. And then I also found, and I grab these whenever I see them, this is in actually pretty good condition. There was another one which was a bit rough, and I decided to leave that because it was a bit tatty. But this one is Joanna Russ, We Who Are About To. It's a pretty slender book, and it's in the Women's Press science fiction edition. And I think the covers on these are really smart design. I really like them. And the artwork is usually quite good as well. And presumably, it being Joanna Russ, the contents are good as well. And then just today, a few books arrived. This one I ordered some weeks back. It's come all the way from Switzerland, I believe. It's Wolf Flow by KW Jeter. The only thing I know KW Jeter for at the moment is the sequel to Blade Runner, of which there are several. I've only read the second one, the first of the sequels, that is book 2. And this is more horror than science fiction, I believe. I did a search on Bookfinder for KW Jeter, and this was one of the ones I could get for sensible money. I think it's cost me 20 quid, including postage. It's a pretty slender book, and it's, as I say, it's a horror tale rather than a science fiction tale. So I think we could call it science fiction adjacent at best, on the basis that KW Jeter wrote it. Then I've got Sherry S. Tepper, The Companions, which is a science fiction tale, and I don't. It's in okay condition. It's a little bit dinged up on the top. I think with a suitable wrap on it, it'll be okay. It's a little bit faded and foxed, honestly. When is this from? Let's see. 2003, so it's about 20 years old. 2004, actually, this edition. If you've read it, let me know. I don't know anything about it. And this is a UK first edition of Eric Brown's New York Nights, which is the first book of the Virex trilogy, I believe. Yeah, Virex trilogy, which is a little bit sort of Matrixy, I think. It's a little bit cyberpunk. It's 2040 and New York is crowded with the lost. Refugees from the radioactive eastern seaboard, the splintered remains of a society in freefall, and the lonely souls looking for salvation from reality crowd the streets between buildings that hide their drabness behind gaudy hologram facades. So it's a little bit cyberpunky, a little bit thrillery, I think, a little bit police procedural or a kind of private investigator type thing. It's a science fiction thriller by all accounts. And there are another 2, so I have to look out for those. I don't have much Eric Brown, and I have yet to read any of his books, but he's a British science fiction author that died last year, I think, or maybe earlier this year. And I gather wrote some pretty good stuff, so I want to educate myself. And I have been looking now for a while for the hardbacks of Greg Bear's Infinity Concerto and The Serpent Mage, which together make up the Songs of Earth and Power, which is a fantasy diptych that he wrote back in the mid-'80s, I think. And they're really hard to come by. And I have some nice paperback copies, which were the result of previously trying to buy hardback copies, and they arrived in the wrong format, but I've kept them. What I was able to find, though, was the omnibus hardback edition from the early 90s. So this is the first, is the first edition of it in this omnibus version with both books in it. And as you can see, it's titled The Songs of Earth and Power. And that contains both novels unabridged. So that's pretty nice, and certainly in lieu of ever being able to find the hardbacks of the individual books, then this will do very nicely. I think I'm going to keep the paperbacks, which I have said many times I'm not going to do, but I like the covers on those, and they will do as nice reading copies for a while. And then I found another, this is the first of 2 Gary Gibson books in this haul. This is The Thousand Emperors, which is from the early 2000s, I think. Let's see. Oh, 2012, so not that long ago. It is a little bit beaten up. The cover is a little bit torn in one place, and the boards are a little bit bent on the corners, what looks like it's where it's been dropped. Might have just happened in the post. But in general, it's in pretty good condition. I haven't read any Gary Gibson either. I've got the Shoal trilogy of his, but I haven't read it yet. And I'm looking forward to it. I think he'd be right up my alley, but I'll have to give him a try first. I probably should do that before I buy too many more of his books, actually. That would probably be sensible. There's a couple of Robert Silverbergs in this haul. This is the first one, a bit of a disappointment. It was a World of Books fail. It's an ex-library book. It wasn't advertised as such. And it's slightly beaten up. So it'll do. I don't have... it's pretty aged, pretty kind of faded and foxed and browned or whatever on the text block, and it's got all the usual kind of library accoutrements on the inside, stickers and whatnot. But it'll do for now. I probably will want to upgrade it at some point. It'll do. It did only cost me a few quid. I don't know if this was a good idea or not. I bought 2 CJ Cherry books, and they are books umpteen and umpteen plus 1 of the Foreigner universe books, of which there are at least 3, 6, 9. I think there are 9, possibly more now. Deliverer and Destroyer. I've got, let's see, which ones have I got? I've got Foreigner, which is the first one, obviously. Then I've got Invader, and then I'm missing 4. And then I've got Destroyer and Deliverer, and I'm missing Pretender. So I've got 4 out of the 9 so far, essentially. So I will certainly be able to read the first 2, and I can decide if I like them or not. And then I may or may not get rid of them. We'll see. Foreigner I've got in trade paperback, and then the others are in hardback. And then I've got an A.A. Atanasio Solace, a relatively slender book. And this, I think, is from the 90s, maybe? Yeah, 94. So this is the first edition in the Hodder and Staunton, and I really don't know a great deal about it. Allegedly, it's another masterwork of science fiction imagination by the acclaimed author of Hardbacks, which is the one I know him for, although I don't have a copy of that. So this is 1,000 years in the future. Charlie, who had his head cryonically frozen upon his death in the 21st century, kind of nowish, wakes to find himself enslaved by a brutal technocracy. And this is the UK first edition. Then we have that rare breed, a new book that I bought for new book money, Echo of Worlds, which is the second of a 2-book series by M.R. Carey, he who wrote The Girl with All the Gifts and The Boy on the Bridge. The Girl with All the Gifts in particular was quite widely read a few years back and made into a movie. So I haven't read the first one yet. I've been waiting to get hold of this one. So hopefully I'll pick the first one of them up, and then I can roll straight into the second. A couple of people I've heard have really enjoyed it. So, well, I'm sure more than a couple of people have really enjoyed it. A couple of people that I know of have enjoyed it. Yes, it's called the Pandemonium Diptych, or Duology, whatever you want to call it. And we've got a couple of more Greg Bears, back to science fiction this time. So we've got Queen of Angels, which is in US first edition, so it would be a world first, in the Warner books. This is from the early 90s, if I remember rightly. Let's see, 1990, yeah. I like the cover on that one. I think it's great. I was looking for a UK first edition in hardback, but the one that I could find was the US one, and it sort of trumps the UK one anyway in terms of being first out, so I'll take it. And then I also got first edition of Slant, which is a sequel from a few years later. Again, in the US, it's a Tor. From, I think, the mid-90s. 97, yeah. So the other one was 1990, this is 97. So that's a sequel. I guess I don't like the cover of that one as much. I think it's a Jim Burns cover, and is the first one Jim Burns as well? No, so that's something else. Jim Burns, he of the beautiful cover art, did the artwork for this one. Very nice it is too. Then we've got another Gary Gibson, another standalone singleton science fiction book, Gary Gibson's Marauders, which is one of his earlier books, I think. I don't know if it's his first one. This came out after the Shoal trilogy, so this was published in 2013. And it's a space opera-y thing along the lines of kind of Neil Asher-esque, I think. That's how I always equate them in my head. I have read a few Neil Ashers. I've not read any Gary Gibson yet, as I said earlier. Then we got a strange double. It's not an ace double, and it's a UK paperback, and it's got Stephen Baxter's Reality Dust, and on the other side, as if by magic, it's got Paul Macaulay's Making History. And those must be novellas, because there's only 150 pages in the entire book. It's a bit of an oddity. I'd not heard of either of those, and I'm not sure. The first conundrum is, where do I file it? Do I file it under B for Baxter or M for Macaulay, which is the primary? I think I'm probably going to go with B for Baxter and go with alphabetical order. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. And then I've got a few pan lozenges. So these two I just ordered off the internet, Vonda McIntyre's The Exile Waiting, and then also Vonda McIntyre's Dream Snake. One was £3 something and the other was £5, including postage. So really not a lot of money, and actually they're not in great condition. Dream Snake is probably the better of the two, and The Exile Waiting has a big fat crease across the corner there and down the spine as well. But they're in no worse condition than some of my other pan lozenges, and considerably better than some. So they're sort of mid-table condition-wise for me. I'm mainly concentrating on completing the set. I think I've got 63 or 4 of them now, and there are 80 to get, so I've still got another 15 or 16 to find. And then I was very, very pleased to get, or be given actually, Bob Shaw, Other Days, Other Eyes, which is really hard to get, and you can pay in this edition. You can easily pay, if you're crazy enough to do so, £30 or £40 for it. It's for some reason really hard to come by. I don't know why. And the same is true of the earlier pan edition as well. I also was given Richard McKenna's Casey Agonista as a short story collection. Quite a nice cover. And then Galactic Pot Healer by Philip K. Dick. And those 3 were all sent to me by none other than Adam Roberts, who I chatted to a couple of weeks back. You may have seen the video towards the end of June. I think it was maybe early July. And after we finished recording, we were talking about the pan lozenges, and he was asking me which ones I still had to get. And he said, I think I've got a few knocking around that you can have if you want. So I sent him my list of gaps, and he found these 3 and posted them to me, which was really generous of him. So these have been touched by greatness. These are Adam Roberts' personal copies that he bought in a charity shop, I think. But still, they're now mine. And then we've got a little treat. I treated myself. It's slightly given away by the fact there's a sticker on the front of the package, but it's a little present from Broken Binding. It wasn't a present, I paid for it, but it's wrapped like a present, so you can enjoy the suspense of the reveal. So this is one of Adrian Tchaikovsky's zillion books that he's publishing this year. June, I believe it came out. And it looks pretty much like the other editions of Service Model, only it's a Broken Binding edition. So it's got sprayed edges. Very nice they are too. It's got artwork on the end papers and the boards, and it's signed by the man himself, Mr. Adrian Tchaikovsky. And probably, yeah, the boards are decorated as well, in this case with a robot's heed. So this is a book that I've been anticipating reading. It was in my science fiction books of 2024 that I really wanted to read, a video that I did at the end of last year or maybe early this year. Very smart it is. It's I always think of it as like a cross between C-3PO and Murderbot. It's somewhere in between the two. It's like a protocol robot gone wrong. We've got Lord Valentine's Castle by Robert Silverberg. I was really pleased to get this. I really enjoyed reading this earlier in the year. It's one of my best books so far in 2024, and quite likely to find its way onto my favourite books of the year list at the end of this year. It's in the Golanx. I don't think it's a Jim Byrne. Nick Bantock is the artist for the artwork. And this is, I would say, in something approaching fine condition. It's really good, and considering it's 44 years old from 1980, that is really nice. This would be the 3rd copy of this I've had. So the first 2 in paperback, one a science fiction masterwork, one the original Pan first edition in paperback, and then this, which is the first edition in hardback, and very nice it is too. It was the UK first, I should say. I'm sure there was an earlier American edition, but this is, so from 1980. A book I very much enjoyed. I'm very happy to have it in hardback. That is everything for this month. I did think at one point that I would combine July and August into one haul, partly because I'm going on holiday and I wasn't sure if I'd have time, but also because I thought I wouldn't have enough books, but I had plenty. Let me know what you've been up to in the bookbind department, and otherwise, as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.